Welcome to EchoCast and welcome Mary Strain, who heads up AI machine learning strategy at Amazon Web Services. AWS is, of course, a major partner of Echo360, providing the global cloud infrastructure that brings the ecosystem's suite of learning solutions to over 2,000 Echo360 customers all over the world through local AWS instances. We are quite literally and locally global, thanks to AWS. And Mary has been one of those AWS leaders that we and I personally have had the great fortune to work with over the years on some of the most cutting edge technologies. In fact, I think, Mary, the first time we worked together was over 3 years ago, talking about ethical AI when people were just starting to talk about that stuff. So, and look how far we've come.
That's right.
Mary has spent a career on the sharpest edges of those cutting edge technologies in education, working at various tech providers, and also spending time in education itself as a curriculum director and faculty. So she has experience kind of on both sides of the aisle, if you will. So why is Mary here today? Well, Mary and the work she and AWS are leading are part of a special EchoCast series here, focusing on the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, Title II regulations, and the measures that higher ed institutions and others are taking with partners like AWS to not only comply with, but to really advance the learning opportunities and the experiences for all learners of all abilities. So, welcome to EchoCast, Mary Strain.
For having me. I'm delighted to be here and so proud of the partnership between Echo360 and AWS. It's been really just a great contribution to education in general. So excited to be here.
Very excited with great stuff to come, which we'll talk about a little bit here on the big show. But before we talk about AWS and Echo and ADA, all that kind of stuff, would love you to share a little bit for those that don't know you, Mary, just a little bit of your background. Like I mentioned, you came from education,
Sure.
and then somewhere along the line got bit with the tech bug. So maybe just give a little bit of that kind of origin story and kind of what brings you to AWS at this time.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I actually started my career as a middle school teacher in the Bronx in New York City. And so I taught middle school for 10 years in New York City. And so I actually think that experience was a huge foundation for both my passion for teaching, learning, education, also sort of equity, and how we're thinking about ensuring that all students have access to the best quality education and all of the opportunities available. And so in early days, because I'm extremely old, when I was working in schools in New York City, there was, we would have something like four computers in a classroom. It was called Project Smart, and there was this idea that we would rotate students and they would learn to sort of interact with the technology. And certainly as technology learning opportunities became available through learning games or curriculum assistance, I was seeing a great divide between sort of how students were accessing those technologies, how they were made available to them, both from a socioeconomic standpoint as well as a personalized learning standpoint, and the ability for folks with different abilities to access the content in different ways. And so that really inspired me to get involved in educational technology so that we were building capabilities that really advanced opportunities for all learners. And that's really where I began my journey, working in very early simulated learning environment, creating simulated learning games for students, and then developing curriculum, and then moving into, all kinds of ways to access learning, both for K-12, but also higher education, and then did a lot of work in workforce development. And so I think there's a huge opportunity in higher education to rethink not just how individuals learn, but who the learners can be. How do we get them to come to, through, and back again higher education experiences? And I think Echo360 is really opening the door for a lot of new learners to access those learning opportunities.
Yeah, of course AWS as well. How does your work? So we're going to scoot ahead now to the work that you're doing at AWS, which obviously as a cloud provider. I mean, AWS provides so many services, so much technology to so many institutions. Specific to accessibility, how
Mhm.
does AWS see accessibility in sort of, and I don't know if it's a continuum, but from just the technical, functional aspects of providing services that make, the learning able to be consumed and experienced. So there's a technical aspect to it, but then back to your background and really seeing more of kind of that equitable kind of access, ensuring that all learners are not able to just consume content, but then really be fully realized. How does AWS look at accessibility?
Sure. And I think it's all part of, we talked about responsible AI and some of the practices that we already have in place in our own tenants as an organization around not just how we build the technology. So building tools and capabilities that are supportive of inclusive environments that are create transparency, create access, create agency, drive the mission and values of our customers. That's incredibly important in sort of the development of the tools that we provide. Tools like Transcribe, which simply takes, video language to text, and then makes it available in hundreds of languages, and then or video accessibility, so that we're working. We just launched a open source solution that allows institutions or organizations to mitigate PDFs so that they're WCAG compliant with new standards for PDF accessibility. So we're constantly looking to sort of support our educational vision and mission, which is access for everyone, anywhere, all the time to education, and that includes students who have learning differences. That includes opportunities for multiple language accessibility. I think generative AI is also creating huge opportunities for students to not only access the content in a native language or in a way that they can consume based on their learning differences, but also has a tremendous sense of agency so that they can take the content, they can reframe it using generative AI to create learning objects that meet their own learning styles and learning needs, or even learning contexts. Someone who comes from a particular cultural context may want to adjust the learning objects that they work with to be able to study and prepare and engage in content differently from the way it's delivered. So the world is changing very, very rapidly, and the ability for organizations like Echo360 to deliver content that meets all of these different learning styles is becoming easier and more accessible, but also the opportunity for organizations like Echo360 to give students access to that content and for them to develop that sense of agency and control, which I think is hugely important and incredibly transformational when we think about often people think of artificial intelligence as something that is done to learners, but a lot of the use cases I'm seeing focus on really how we're empowering learners to have access to content, and also to have more agency and control over the content that they're working with.
Yeah, well, and at scale as well. I think a lot of the AI stuff also allows for that, all the, whether it's translations, I mean, just to happen without needing to be, needing to wait for it, needing
Yeah.
for, things to scale. So with all of the kind of the virtues that you just, rattled off there, which are like, gosh, it's hard to argue with any of that stuff. Do you find, and you've had a career working in technology where part of the challenge of any kind of technology is the adoption of it. And how do you get people to actually like embrace it and use it? Specific to the accessibility stuff and this Title II, which is kind of looming, all of these sort of requirements that schools are going to have to, kind of be set up for. And that's why we're working so closely together to make sure that we're, providing those kinds of tools. Is AWS running into any kind of like what kind of I don't know, resistance might not be the right word, but are there obstacles to having all of this kind of technology really embraced by institutions? Or is it more just a matter of awareness and access? And as soon as they know about it and can get it, then it kind of runs.
Sure. And I can speak to my experience. Just, I speak with hundreds and hundreds of higher education institutions feels like every week, but I'm sure that's more like every year. But I think there is some initial resistance, but it has a lot to do with sort of education, helping people understand how the technology is really there to support learning opportunities for students and to facilitate professors or faculty members' strategies and capability really to meet the learning styles of all of their our students. It's incredibly daunting, even as a middle school teacher and of course as a faculty member, to have the level of awareness of each of the individual learning styles for students, particularly those that are, mandated, sort of compliance related, and then to adjust content to meet all of those learning styles. I was talking to a faculty member on the West Coast who has 3 sections of 500 students each for an introductory course at a big state university. That is simply impossible to create the really hyper personalized learning. So when we use things like artificial intelligence, capabilities like transcribe, capabilities like recognition for video adjustments, generative AI capabilities to hyper personalize that content, it gives them the ability to provide the high quality content and sort of intellectual property that they're interested in sort of engaging with and delivering, but for students to consume it in a hyper personalized way. And to me, that is once we explain that to them, that we are not replacing them as the sort of expert in the room, and sort of not diminishing their intellectual property with the use of technology, that we're really sort of helping students consume it in a way that is best for them. I think that education goes a long way, but it's a little bit of a leap. We have to make sure that we're out talking about it, and that's part of my role, is really helping people understand that artificial intelligence is not meant to replace the incredibly valuable role of faculty members and engagement in classrooms, but really to augment.
Yeah, well, in addition, I would imagine just to the kind of the cultural, not big C cultural, but just the kinds of whether it's personal or organizational cultures that you're working with, day in day out. There's also a technical aspect to the integration of any technology, and this is where I think AWS does such a great job of, like with us and others, walking alongside institutions to integrate, like technically integrate now the technology into those existing kind of workflows. Within education, there's LMS, things like that. So talk about how, in addition to just the more sort of like cognitive harmony that you need to kind of be listening to customers and making sure that, kind of you're sort of in symbiosis there. But like the technical aspects to it, how does AWS look at literally integrating technologies into those workflows so that, it can ease an adoption, that it doesn't just, have to disrupt, a way that an instructor has been teaching for the last 20 years or whatever, so that it can just sort of like seamlessly kind of integrate.
Yeah, and so that's really the work that we do with our partners like Echo360, right? That we spend a lot of time bringing both my background and expertise about what the market is requiring and looking for and needs, to partners like yourselves to think about how we integrate this into tools and capabilities that your customers are familiar with already. There's a lot of sort of standalone point solutions that require students or faculty members to leave kind of familiar capabilities, and that's not working well. They want to be able to gain the value of AI capabilities, gain the value of accessibility experiences through the existing partners and relationships that they have. And so I think that's where Echo360 sort of makes the AI a part of the solution without having it become a separate capability. Technically, AWS works with partners like Echo360 to provide what I think of as sort of the foundational infrastructure. And so as new capabilities become available, Echo360 and others are able to simply turn them on. We think about things like agentic learning. We think about new capabilities around even transcribe and transcription, which has been sort of long-standing in the market, but now using that information to generate generative AI quizzes and tests for students, to create prompts and feedback to students more quickly and accessibly. So as the technology improves and enhances, Echo360 is able to quickly adopt and bring those capabilities directly to your customers. A lot of the work I'm doing with higher education in particular is figuring out what they should build and what they should rely on their educational technology partners to build. And I think, most educational institutions do not have the technical capabilities to be able to build these out themselves. And they really should be relying on thoughtful, reliable, responsible partners like Echo360 to bring those capabilities to their classroom. classroom again. So they're not reinventing the wheel, but taking advantage of the best-in-class capabilities that are brought to them through these partners.
Yeah, well, and I think a great example of that is, the work that we're doing together within live captioning and making sure that that is going to be a service that's going to be available both for the Title II requirements and then beyond. How do you? I love
I
your
just want
job.
to
Oh yeah,
I want to jump on the live captioning piece
yeah,
too, because I think that is such an under-indexed piece of the learning, right? And when we talk about accessibility, a lot of the accessible content is sort of generated pre or sort of not capturing the in-class experience that students who might have a hearing processing challenge or a visual processing challenge are simply missing because it's not captured in the sort of official content. But when we think about higher education, so much of the value is that in-class interaction, the network that you build, the conversations that are had, the debates that are had. In fact, I think in the world of AI, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, those skills are going to become even more superpowers. So how do we ensure that students are really, of all learning backgrounds, are able to engage and access that? And that's why I just wanted to index in on that live captioning thing. I think it's such an important value to students to be able to ensure that they are taking advantage of what I see as the most valuable components of the learning experience.
no, we were on the same page there because where I was heading with that is
Oh,
because
sorry.
no, this is you're
Yeah.
exactly like you're reading my mind because I feel like the live captioning it's the most authentic uh, experience because it's actually happening there. So and so and your role at AWS is ensuring that whether things are live or not, it's ensuring that there's a trustworthiness, there's the ethical, there's an authenticity
Mhm.
that's coming with the tech. And so the question was going to be, how do and that's a big job. I mean, so how do you infuse that sort of level of it's not conscience, but it is. I'll just keep going back to authenticity. How do you ensure that that authenticity is there when it isn't live? Like, live is great because it's like literally happening right there. How do you go
Mhm.
about, making sure that the technology doesn't get so far ahead of itself that it then misses, the kind of assurances that an educator, especially, is going to need to sort of like maintain sort of the kind of fidelity of the
Mhm.
actual learning experience that they're trying to create.
Right. Well, and that's the capturing that magic, right, in a bottle.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is sort of we always the live captioning, right? So we're capturing what happens in those conversations, but it's also about how we use what we call human in the loop, but really the ability for individuals to review the content, transparency around how the content is captured, maintained, supported, shared. And so we have a couple of services called service cards that really show what the data was. There's metadata associated with it. So we're looking at the integrity of the timeline. We're looking at the integrity of the artifact itself, and then creating service cards that show what guardrails were applied. So was there toxic content or inappropriate content that didn't meet sort of industry, university standards that were sort of flagged in the conversation? We can have guardrails to ensure that if we're using generative AI capabilities and large language models, to ensure that we've mitigated for algorithmic bias in the output, that we've mitigated and removed any PII information. So all of that technical capabilities that we're bringing to bear in the market help to ensure that the content is safe, the content is reliable, that there is traceability to ensure integrity of the content. And all of that, I think, is critically important, especially as we think about, ensuring, no misinformation or disinformation or fakes that might come out of it.
Yeah. It's all great stuff, and we are so proud to be partnering with AWS on this stuff coming up and the stuff further out ahead. So we're going to let Mary go now, but everybody else stick around for a quick demo now of some of the applications that Mary referred to just now in this episode. And then you can all go to echo360.com for more EchoCast episodes and resources to transform your own learning.
Thanks again to Mary Strain from AWS for joining us and helping showcase how AWS is powering accessibility and innovation within Echo360's ecosystem. One of the key differentiators with AWS is their transcription accuracy, recognized globally as the most precise in the industry. This level of accuracy is critical, not just for transcription, but also for live captioning. AWS ties their transcription engine directly into live captioning, ensuring that the same robust language options available for transcription are also available in real time. This will be coming soon to Echo Video ahead of the Title II changes in 2026. Another standout feature from AWS is their support for custom dictionaries. This enables institutions to regionalize their transcription, whether it's local terminology, names, or dialects, making the experience more relevant and inclusive. And because of the exceptional accuracy of AWS transcription, we were thrilled to select AWS as the foundation for building out Ask Echo. Now, let's walk through a demo of how this works inside of Echo Video. When a recording is uploaded, Echo Video automatically generates a transcript using AWS. These transcripts are displayed in a dedicated panel alongside the video and are fully searchable, downloadable, and editable. This makes it incredibly easy to reference past content, whether you're reviewing a lecture, pulling quotes for a report, or using Ask Echo to surface key concepts. Once finalized, the transcript can be pushed to the closed captions track automatically if it meets a confidence threshold, or manually if preferred. It's not just transcription, it's a launchpad for smarter, more personalized learning. Because learning changes for the good.